Leviticus 25. The Lord said to Moses at Mount Sinai, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, when you enter the land I am going to give you, the land itself must observe a Sabbath to the Lord. For 6 years sow your fields, and for 6 years prune your vineyards and gather their crops. But in the 7th year the land is to have a year of Sabbath rest, a Sabbath to the Lord. Do not sow your fields or prune your vineyards. Do not reap what grows of itself or harvest the grapes of your untended vines. The land is to have a year of rest. Whatever the land yields during the Sabbath year will be food for you, for yourself, your male and female servants, and the hired workers and temporary resident who lives among you, as well as for your livestock and the wild animals in your land. Whatever the land produces may be eaten. Count off 7 Sabbath years, 7 times 7 years, so that the 7 Sabbath years amount to a period of 49 years. Then have the trumpet sounded everywhere on the 10th day of the 7th month. On the Day of Atonement, sound the trumpet throughout your land. Consecrate the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout the land to all its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee for you. Each of you is to return to your family property and to your own clan. The 50th year shall be a jubilee for you. Do not sow or do not reap what grows of itself or harvest the untended vines, for it is a jubilee and is to be holy for you. Eat only what is taken directly from the fields. In this year of jubilee, everyone is to return to their own property. If you sell land to any of your own people or buy land from them, do not take advantage of each other. You are to buy from your own people on the basis of the number of years since the Jubilee, and they are to sell to you on the basis of the number of years left for harvesting crops. When the years are many, you are to increase the price, and when the years are few, you are to decrease the price, because what is really being sold to you is the number of crops. Do not take advantage of each other, but fear your God. I am the Lord your God. Follow my decrees and be careful to obey my laws, and you will live safely in the land. Then the land will yield its fruit, and you will eat your fill and live there in safety. You may ask, what will we eat in the 7th year if we do not plant or harvest our crops? I will send you such a blessing in the 6th year that the land will yield enough for 3 years. While you plant during the 8th year, you will eat from the old crop and will continue to eat from it until the harvest of the 9th year comes in. Okay, I'm going to stop right there because then it goes into talking more about the Jubilee year, and the year that I want to focus on is the Sabbath year. This is often referred to as the Shemitah year. And that year began last year on Rosh Hashanah, which is the beginning of the creation year, the first day of the creation year. First day and first month is the month of Ethanim, which is sometimes referred to as Tishrei, although I'm trying to get out of that habit because that's a Babylonian name. And that month of Ethanim is the 7th month of the Exodus year. Now, Rosh Hashanah is the same as Feast of Trumpets. And so this begins the new creation year, and it begins the high holy, what's often referred to as the high holy days, which are Feast of Trumpets, Day of Atonement, and the Festival of Tabernacles. We're not going to get into the high holy days in this video. We're just simply going to talk about this year, the Sabbath year, where we're supposed to let the land rest. So this was the command, is that essentially the Israelites were required, you have to remember that the Israelites, this was their livelihood. This is how they lived. Not only did they live off of the land, but that's also what they sold as their livelihood. So this was their job. And they were required to allow the land to rest in the 7th year and to trust God's promise that he was going to provide such a blessing in the 6th year that the land would continue to produce. And you see that he says here, whatever the land yields during the Sabbath year will be food for you. And he tells them for 6 years, you're supposed to prune your vineyards and gather their crops. But he forbids them to do that in order to store up for the Sabbath year. He wants them to trust that Not only is God going to provide for the 6th year, the 7th year, but he's also going to provide for the 8th year, because in the 7th year they would not have sown any seeds, so they're not going to harvest any crop. But he promises, I'm going to provide you this. And so you see that this follows the same theme that he was demonstrating to the Israelites with the manna from heaven. I'm going to provide manna each day. You need to trust that I'm going to provide it each day. Don't start collecting each day for the next day. And then those who started doing that, those who tried to store because they didn't trust that he was going to provide, God sent maggots to the manna. And this was not some sort of scientific formula or determination of how long manna lasts. God is perfectly capable of having manna last forever. In fact, there's a jar of manna in the Ark of the Covenant somewhere up in heaven, by the way. I know that there's a lot of people who say the Ark of the Covenant is found in such and such land, or it's, buried away somewhere. But we know that at the end of the age, the Ark of the Covenant is going to be seen when heaven opens up. So that's where the Ark of the Covenant was taken up. In any event, God does not have a jar of manna rotted out with maggots inside of the Ark of the Covenant. That would be ridiculous, right? So he's perfectly capable of making that manna last forever. And in order for the Israelites to learn that they needed to obey him and to understand his sovereignty, to understand what happens when you obey versus when you disobey, when they disobeyed him and tried to trust in the work of their hands, he sent maggots to the manna. But when they obeyed him and they did collect for 2 days in preparation for Sabbath, he preserved the manna. He did not send maggots to the manna. He was teaching them also how to obey and observe his Sabbath. He also made sure that on Sabbath that there was no manna. So if they went out looking for manna, they weren't going to find it. So he was teaching them like young children. What do you do with young children? You put really tight boundaries around their freedom because they can't handle freedom. But now that God has taught us and we know full well what is expected of us, he allows us to have some stumbling blocks. And he allows that in order to test our hearts and minds as to whether or not we're going to actually obey and follow him. So God taught them about the Sabbath day. Now he's teaching them in Leviticus 25 about the Sabbath year. And many of us have such difficulty with keeping one day out of the week holy, withholding from ourselves, resting, keeping ourselves from engaging in work, the work of our own hands, that observing a Sabbath year is like unfathomable to us. And one of the things that we do is we look at this and we say, oh, this doesn't apply to me. Well, we don't work the fields here. This was just for Israel. That was for that time. But I don't see here where it says that. And I don't see here where it says that this was only for the Israelites. That said, I'm going to talk with you about how God has worked with me on this topic. And I want to be really careful because I don't want to be creating a new doctrine. So I want you to know that I'm speaking strictly on what God has done with me in the last year. My understanding of God's heart, and that is something that I talk with you about all the time, that in order to understand Scripture, we have to understand his heart. So I will be very curious to hear if God has done any of this with you or a version of this with you. I've heard from different people about things that God has done, such as causing them to let go of work and be comfortable with the provision of their husband. I have also known people who ended their employment altogether because God was calling them out of that. I have also known people who left their careers because God was calling them out of that. And he did it in season with this Sabbath year. So I find that to be very interesting. And, part of what I'm looking at is I'm looking at what is God doing with the people with whom I work? What are the themes that he's raising? So going back to this topic of God's heart, is God concerned about the land, or is the relevance to us the withholding of the work of our own hands? And I'm going to say that for most of us, working the land is not relevant to us anymore. We do that more as a hobby rather than a means of survival or a means of livelihood, because technically we don't want to say that we're surviving based on our livelihood, because that kind of means that we're saying that we're surviving on the work of our hands. So let's just consider for a moment what this would have been like for the Israelites. If this was their means of livelihood, they didn't have like a grocery store that they could go to get their food, and they were selling what they were growing. So maybe they had some sort of a grocery store, but you get the idea. They ate from the land, they sold from the land. That was their livelihood. And so they knew that as farmers that they needed to sow at a certain time. They needed to harvest at a certain time. They knew how to prune their vines to maximize the growth, to keep healthy plants, they were very aware, very cognizant of their plants. And God had taught them the things they needed to do in order to maximize their crop. But why did God teach that to them? Was his desire for them to understand how to bear fruit by the work of their hands, how to trust in the work of their hands? Or was his desire to speak certain spiritual significance? Because we know that he does that. And in fact, he even tells us that the Father is the vine dresser. He's the gardener. We are the branches. Christ is the vine. If we separate from the vine, we're going to be as a branch that dries up and withers and is good for nothing but to throw into the fire. But if we stay connected to the vine and we're bearing fruit, the gardener is going to come along. The vine dresser will come along, who is the Father. He's going to prune us, and he's going to cause us to bear more fruit. So the desire, again, God uses tangible objects to help us to understand spiritual symbolism. His desire was never to dwell in temples made by human hands. His desire was never for animal sacrifices. His desire, I don't believe, is either for us to be concerned so much about tending a garden as it is for us to understand the spiritual symbolism of that garden, which again is the reason why I tell you I love to be in my garden. Even if I'm not doing much, even if I'm just waking up and walking through the garden, I enjoy that because God speaks to me through it. Now here, when God says, look, you're to take this year off, I'm not going to give you all the manna up front, right? I'm not going to give you the harvest up front so that you can trust in the work of your own hands, so you can look at your storage and go, there's my refuge. There's my security. So you can look at your bank account and say, there's my storage. There's my refuge. He's going to give what they need as they need it. And you know what? That's going to be painful because they're really going to have to circumcise from their sinful desires to capitalize on what God is doing, to sneak a little seed into the ground. It's going to be uncomfortable because they're going to have to trust every single day that God is going to continue to provide. Oh my goodness. I just feel so much joy right now, even as I'm talking, that God has placed this on my heart to talk about because I see this so clearly in my life right now. So here's what God did with me in the past year. I was still learning about the significance of this Sabbath year. So I cannot say that I have done this perfectly whatsoever. And in fact, I was still trying to understand whether or not he wanted me to work in my yard. But from the beginning of this Sabbath year, because we're in this Sabbath year right now, Ethanim 1, 2021 to Ethanim 1, 2022. So we're coming to a close on this Sabbath year. Now, God started doing something with me before Ethanim 1, 2021 started. He started stripping me of my career. He started telling me things like, these specialties that I had that were the most lucrative parts of my career, the most status, glory, prestige. He said, it's got to go. It's not of me. You're doing a new thing. You got to choose. What do you want? And so I canceled all of my contracts and I let go of that specialty. I also had contracts in different facilities, various facilities and staff. And God began to convict me that this was not of him, that I had to choose this new thing that he's doing in me, or did I want to continue to stay connected to that second most lucrative part of my career? So he not only stripped me of these specialties and contracts, he stripped me of the reputation associated with them. He stripped me of the finances. He stripped me of the staff. I have 2 mortgages and many, many financial responsibilities. So this is not a small thing. This is like a give it up, give everything up. Like the world would lock me up probably over something like this. I mean, it is really a major, major thing to do. But listen, he's done some major, major things in my life to prove to me who he is. And everything he's given me doesn't belong to me anyway. It belongs to him. It's for his glory. He can do whatever he wants. And I remember very clearly in the beginning when he first started talking to me that he said to me, you saw what you can do. Now you're going to see what I will do. I still don't know all that entails. I don't know what that looks like financially. I have a feeling it doesn't look like I'm going to be wealthy again. And you know what? That's okay. Because I have wealth that awaits me that I can't even fathom. So this is major. It's really big. And that's what he's had me doing over the course of, probably the last year and a half. I no longer have any staff who work for me, at least not doing this type of work. I have someone who works with me who does some other sort of maintenance type things around the office. Because quite frankly, it's hard enough to find people who actually want to do this work on their own. And I can't have people working with me who don't do the work. So I imagine that there will be at some point. Now, look, this is a lot of personal information, but I think it's important for you to understand what God's doing with me because he's going to do similar things with you. Now, quite frankly, my savings is not so great that I can continue this, that I can keep this up. But the pattern that God has established with me is that there is a certain amount of money that I have. And then when it gets to a certain point, he replenishes it again with something that I never saw coming. I'm not even kidding about this. This is so real, what he does. He will replenish my savings with something I never saw coming. Because let me be blatantly honest with you, what I'm doing here is not making me money. The books I sell, the workshops that I do, it's not a lot of money. It's not enough to cover my bills. But here's the amazing thing, is when you're doing God's work, he covers the bills. He 100% provides for his ministry. I'm telling you that he has replenished that money with money that I did not see coming. And he has made sure that I live a comfortable life. Now, understand that what I would have called comfortable several years ago is totally different from what I would call comfortable now. Several years ago, I would have just gone shopping just to go shopping because I had the ability to go shopping. to go find something I didn't know I needed, which is kind of ridiculous if you think about it. I would go to dinners, I would go out, I would go to, clubs, things like that, spending money because I had it and I thought that I had earned that right. And also because I was trying to buy some sort of happiness that I did not have in my life. My life is incredibly different from the way that it was several years ago. God has brought me small and low so that I could see the things that he's blessed me with and really appreciate what he's given me. So getting back to this Sabbath year and the heart of God, is God concerned about land? Is it really about the gardening? Or is it about helping the Israelites to understand that he is the one who provides? And just as he has done with me, that he can provide without the work of my hands. And understand that the work that he has me doing is not the same kind of work, right? It's not the same kind of work that I was doing before. I'm not trying to strategize my business the way that I used to as a businesswoman. I'm not trying to build any kind of empire for myself. I'm focused on building the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of my God. So I'm not altering the message. I'm not trying to make things palatable for the world or inclusive. There's no concern in my heart to dilute this message because of a fear that I have that I'm not going to be able to pay my bills, because this isn't what pays my bills. And that's the position that I want you to understand that God has brought me to. And that's the position that he wanted the Israelites to understand. That storehouse that you have is not going to be your refuge. Do not reap what grows of itself or harvest the grapes of your untended vines. The land is to have a year of rest. Whatever the land yields during the Sabbath year will be food for you, for yourself, your male and female servants, and the hired workers and temporary residents who live among you, as well as for your livestock and the wild animals in your land. Whatever the land produces may be eaten. Okay, so whatever the people would have tried to store in their storehouse or something like that, you think God has the ability to send maggots to that and show them and discipline them and teach them, I am the Lord, I will provide for you, your trust is supposed to be in me. That's where your heart is supposed to be. So I got to be honest, when I first started this video, I really didn't know the connections that I was going to make. But I shared in the video before this that it's been a weird day for me. It's been really weird. And I have felt God's presence on me so heavy, so strong, that him calling me back in, or not back in, but to call me in deeper into him. And I actually knew yesterday that I was going to be talking about the Sabbath year, but I didn't end up talking about it yesterday. And today he's bringing it back to me. And although I didn't know what he was doing in season with his Sabbath year, how he was working with me, how he was stripping me in season with his Sabbath year. And now that I look, I didn't know at the time what he was doing, but now that I look back at it and I'm talking about it, it is so incredibly clear. And it's so incredibly clear because I know the feeling of like my bank account going lower and then kind of freaking out a little bit. I don't want to say freaking out, but that concern coming up and me, reaching out to him and saying, okay, Lord, I'm trusting you. There's no going back anyway. I can't go, get my reputation back. I can't go get those contracts back. I've given it all to you. I'm following it. I'm in this 100%. And then him bringing that account right back up again. He is perfectly capable of doing it. But understand that he didn't just give me like a bunch of money, a storehouse for me to place my hope in that lie, in that refuge. He required me to put my faith where my mouth is, to trust and know that he's going to keep providing. And he has done it, which is weird. It's just weird. It's weird when I think about it, when I think about how many staff I had, when I think about the different contracts I had and how hard I worked. And he's right. I saw what I could do, and look what he's doing. He's taking care of everything. I don't have the plush lifestyle that I used to have, but that's not where I'm at anymore. He's rooted that out of me as well. And let me tell you something. I don't live in fear. I'm not worried about this all the time. I'm not worried about building a business and making sure that I leave something, for my daughter and all these other. I'm not worried. I'm not plagued by all those things. I get to actually live this life the way that God wants me to live this life and truly enjoy time with my family. Enjoy my daughter, enjoy my son-in-law, enjoy the members of my family who, they're not blood related, but they're family. The family that we've created. The family that God created, in him. Okay, there's something else I want to read to you that God was drawing my attention to even before telling me, now you're going to read, about the Sabbath year. So I'm going to read from 2 Kings chapter 3. Joram, son of Ahab, became king of Israel in Samaria in the 18th year of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, and he reigned 12 years. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord, but not as his father and mother had done. He got rid of the sacred stone of Baal that his father had made. Nevertheless, he clung to the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he had caused Israel to commit. He did not turn away from them. Now Mesha, king of Moab, raised sheep, and he had to pay the king of Israel a tribute of 100,000 lambs and the wool of 100,000 rams. But after Ahab died, the king of Moab rebelled against the king of Israel. So at that time, King Joram set out from Samaria and mobilized all Israel. He also sent this message to Jehoshaphat, king of Judah. The king of Moab has rebelled against me. Will you go with me to fight against Moab? I will go with you, he replied. I am as you are, my people as your people, my horses as your horses. By what route shall we attack, he asked. Through the desert of Edom, he answered. So the king of Israel set out with the king of Judah and the king of Edom. After a roundabout march of 7 days, the army had no more water for themselves or for the animals with them. What, exclaimed the king of Israel, has the Lord called us 3 kings together only to deliver us into the hands of Moab? But Jehoshaphat asked, Is there no prophet of the Lord here through whom we may inquire of the Lord? An officer of the king of Israel answered, Elisha, son of Shaphat, is here. He used to pour water on the hands of Elijah. Jehoshaphat said, The word of the Lord is with him. So the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat and the king of Edom went down to him. Elisha said to the king of Israel, Why do you want to involve me? Go to the prophets of your father and the prophets of your mother. No, the king of Israel answered, because it was the Lord who called us 3 kings together to deliver us into the hands of Moab. Elisha said, As surely as the Lord Almighty lives, whom I serve, if I did not have respect for the presence of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, I would not pay any attention to you. But now bring me a harpist. While the harpist was playing, the hand of the Lord came on Elisha, and he said, Okay, now pay attention to what he says here. This is the part that God was really speaking to me through. This is what the Lord says. I will fill this valley with pools of water. For this is what the Lord says. You will see neither wind nor rain. Yet this valley will be filled with water, and you, your cattle, and your other animals will drink. You understand that he's going to give water, but he's not going to give water from rain. Think about that for a minute. He's not going to send rain. He's just going to fill the land with water. This isn't, and then the very next thing he says is, this is an easy thing in the eyes of the Lord. This is an easy thing. I mean, think about that. You want to fill, you see Lake Mead is like drying up, or Po in Italy. But this is an easy thing for the Lord to do without even sending rain. Like, where is it even going to come from, right? But they literally are saying in here, this is an easy thing in the eyes of the Lord. He will also deliver Moab into your hands. Like, no big deal. I mean, I know that we say that God can do these things, but we worry about them night and day, don't we? Like, we freak out when we start to see, or when God starts to call us out of something like a career that we built our lives around. When he tells us, give money to the poor, give money to your enemies. If your enemy tries to sue you, give them your cloak too. I mean, we freak out about that stuff. I freak out about that stuff because it's hard. When he says, get rid of your shoes. Those shoes. It was very hard. I had to tell the person to take the shoes away before I cried. But listen, it's super, super hard for us to do these things, but it's easy for the Lord. All he wants to know is your heart actually for me? This is an easy thing in the eyes of the Lord. He will also deliver Moab into your hands. You will overthrow every fortified city and every major town. You will cut down every good tree, stop up all the springs, and ruin every good field with stones. So that's really, I'm not going to continue on reading. That's the part that he was just really bringing my attention to, is you think this is hard. You don't have the capability to do this. And he was showing me how in the last year, he has trained me and taught me to trust him. And believe me, there have been times, because I was really one of those people who trusted big time in the work of my hands, but I could never rest. I could never rest because I was always concerned that the world was going to stop moving if I rested. And it's been easy for God. No big deal. As long as I rent my heart completely to him, submitted and did the work, even though he told me, let me tell you, during this past year, he had me giving money to my enemies. He had me giving away all my cash. And I'm not going to tell you everything that he's had me do, because I'm going to get the full reward for that. But these things he's had me do. And just when I thought that I had given everything that I could give, then he convicts me of the next thing that he wants me to give. And he's so faithful. He's totally blessed me for doing that. And I know that I have blessings in heaven for doing this. So I just want you to take heart in that, in this message, that this is an easy thing in the eyes of the Lord. He will also deliver Moab into your hands. No big deal for God. All he wants is a heart that's for him. Now, let's be careful, because I don't want anyone to interpret this as prosperity gospel. And so I want you to pay attention to what I've said in this video. I don't live the posh lifestyle that I used to live. This is about our hearts. This is about God pushing us as far as we can go to learn this lesson and to prove faithful. Because there's no way that God is going to give me provision to return to a life of self. Absolutely no way. There's no way that he's going to put up with me dressing myself in the world ever again. So please understand that this is about the faithfulness of God. This is not about God blessing us with world wealth. That is a lie. And again, he did not provide me a lump sum of money for me to put my faith in that lie. For me to look at my bank account and say, okay, as long as I stay here, I have security. Nope, he's pushed me up against the wall. And he has definitely used that to make me weak. And what does he tell us in the word? In your weakness, I'm made strong. So this is 100% for his glory. This is not for him to glorify me here on earth. All right, so not surprisingly, the very next chapter is regarding the widow's olive oil. So if this isn't enough to convince you, I want you to hear this story. The wife of a man from the company of the prophets cried out to Elisha, your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that he revered the Lord. But now his creditor is coming to take my 2 boys as his slaves. Elisha replied to her, how can I help you? Tell me what you have in your house. Your servant has nothing there at all, she said, except a small jar of olive oil. Elisha said, go around and ask all your neighbors for empty jars. Don't ask for just a few. I got to tell you, I'm feeling very emotional about this right now. I just feel so touched. I feel so touched at the way that God is speaking to me right now and helping me to see his faithfulness and how much he loves me. So Elisha said, go around and ask your neighbors for empty jars. Don't ask for just a few. Then go inside and shut the door behind you and your sons. Pour oil into all the jars, and as each filled, put it to one side." She left him and shut the door behind her and her sons. They brought the jars to her, and she kept pouring. When all the jars were full, she said to her sons, "Bring me another one." But he replied, "There's not a jar left." Then the oil stopped flowing. She went and told the man of God, and he said, "Go, sell the oil and pay your debts. You and your sons can live on what is left." So even there, he still provides in abundance. He provides enough for them to have something left to live on. Not only will her sons not go into slavery, but they're going to have something to live on. He doesn't forget a single detail. Again, all he wants is a heart that's for him. This wasn't exactly the message that I don't even know what I set out to talk about, to be honest. That's usually the case in these videos, but I did have it on my heart the last couple days that I wanted to talk about the Sabbath year and help you to understand God's heart and what he's revealed to me. And as it is, he just revealed so much to me as I was even doing this video about how faithful he's been to me this past year. And look, I've continued to work. I've continued to have my hand to the plow. And he has reminded me so many times, because I've asked him, "Is this something that you want me to do?" And he's reminded me so many times that, that Christ said, "My Father is always working, and it's good to do good on the Sabbath." And so I've continued doing this mostly for free. I get a little bit of payment at workshops and things like that, but mostly for free. And even though he has told me that I am able to collect payment on certain things, I don't collect payment on everything. Most things I don't collect payment on because I want it to be completely and totally accessible. I don't want anyone being left out. And I want to tell you that that's to the glory of the Father, because that was not my heart when I started this. There were some things that I would do for free, but I could kind of justify it because I had a large staff. But to be reduced to one person and doing things for free is like lunacy, would have been lunacy in my mind. I would have been a complete nervous wreck if I had done something like this several years ago. So this is the heart of Sabbath. This is the heart of God, first of all, and this is his heart with regard to Sabbath. He just wants us to be completely circumcised, completely for him. Not trusting in the work of our own hands, but trusting in him, knowing that he is sovereign and that he's the one who provides. So this year is about to end on Feast of Trumpets, which I believe is September 26th on the Gregorian calendar. And look, God was teaching me about this year. There's no reason for any of us to say, "Oh, we're almost there, so I haven't done it right, so no sense in trying now." Spend some time with God. Pray. Ask him what he wants from you, what he wants to teach you, how to understand his heart. And I would love to hear from anyone. If anything comes to mind, or if God puts something on your heart as you're doing your prayer time with him, how has God worked this in you this year? Has God pulled you out of anything? Has he drawn you in to trust in him to provide in any particular way? Well, I got to tell you, this video really, I feel very blessed through this video that I got to be face to face with what God's done in me this year. Thank you so much for listening. God bless you, and I'll see you in the next video.